In Pit Lane, brought to you by Online Invent, and with thanks to our Platinum Star Patreon supporters. Hello everybody and welcome to the final edition of In Pit Lane for 2024. Well, this is not the way we wanted to finish the year. Certainly not the way that I wanted to finish the year. As some of you may know, if you follow us on the In Pit Lane Facebook page or on my own personal Facebook page, you might be aware that I had a bad accident a couple of weeks ago, and as a result, can't get into the studio to finish the next couple of episodes, the last couple of episodes of In Pit Lane. As it turns out, we'd had a great day on that up until that point, because we had just come back from the Team 18 Open Day, where I caught up with someone that I wanted to have an interview with for quite some time. He was probably one of the few people on the bucket list that I never ever got the opportunity to chat to before. And that is Australian motorsport legend Colin Bond. They called him sort of Mr. Versatile. The man has driven everything. And we were scheduled to go in and chat to him for about 15, 20 minutes. We ended up doing about 40 minutes. And if you want to see the whole of the interview in full, and we only cover a very small part of his amazing career. But if you want to see the interview in full, check out the In Pit Lane YouTube channel coming up in a few weeks' time, as soon as after I've had the operation probably, and after when I'm in a more sort of position to upload it. But anyway, it was a great interview with Colin. So I hope you will enjoy it. Also coming up at the end of the program, yes, the live music continues, because, hey, right now while I'm doing this, the rest of the In Pit Lane family are in the studios at RMITV in the heart of Grand Prix City, Melbourne, recording our band for the night. They are Melbourne band, the Grandfather Paradox, and they're going to take us out at the end of the program. But right now, let's take you to Team 18's headquarters out in Mount Waverley and check out our interview with our special guest, Mr. Colin Bond. So what do you do? We're here at the Team 18 Open Day today. I mean, what brings you down here?
Well, Charlie asked me to come down. I do give Charlie a bit of a hand at the races when I go. You know, being in the Hall of Fame, I get a Guernsey or a pass to go to all the races meetings I want to go to. And Charlie's usually got a VIP suite or something. I go and talk to the people that are there. I don't try and run the team or anything for him. I just like to sort of just give him a hand. If we can get a bit of publicity on the way, that's fine.
So obviously, I mean, the sport has changed so much from the days when you started. What do you think about the sport today? As you look around this level of professionalism, did you ever think that it would turn into something like this?
Well, I think all sports are the same. It's not just motorsport. I mean, you know, I was playing professional soccer, you know, when I was 17 and at the top level, and you sort of look, and it was pretty basic then, of course, you know, and how you played, and all that's changed. So I think it's just the way the world's gone. It becomes more technical. It's more, you know, the cars are becoming more, how can I say it, more scientific in a lot of respects, because they just use computers to organise the cars, you know, make sure that they're running properly and so on, and then can monitor when they're running around the track how they're going and how they're handling. So it's completely different. If you go back, you know, to the beginning when we used to sort of run series production motor cars, and you know the boys would actually, in '69 for argument's sake, when we won Bathurst in the Monaro, the boys would drive the cars from Harry's workshop here in Melbourne to Bathurst, you know, on the road, and just sort of test them against each other on the way, and that was the way it was done. Whereas now, obviously, today you've got the big transporters. You've got
so with all this professionalism, the computers, and all the rest of it, what have we lost?
Well, I don't think the drivers seem to have too much input anymore, you know, into making the car go faster, because the engineers seem to be able to look at all that, look at all the data, see if it's understeering, oversteering, you know, the angle the steering's on, all that type of thing. Whereas I think in our day, again, we sort of, by the seat of your bum, basically. You know, you go along and you change springs and shocks and things, and you think, yep, that's better, or it's not as fast, or whatever the case may be. Now, you know, the computer can almost tell you what you should be setting and what you should be doing. And I guess too that we had different tyres, we had different gear ratios, we had all sorts of things which you could change in your car so that you could possibly be faster or better out of corners or whatever the case may be. Whereas today all the cars have got the same equipment, you know, got the same brakes, they've got the same horsepower, they've got the same gear ratios, they've got everything. It then becomes hard to pass because, you know, when everyone's got the same equipment, you sort of just can't whistle
That's
down
the thing. I mean, everybody's talking about parity nowadays and how important that is. But I mean, you come from a time. I mean, when you started, like you know, in the 1960s and racing even into the 1970s, you had a 6-cylinder Tirana GTRX. You won, and you were up against a 6-litre 351 GTHO Falcon, and then you had smaller cars. You had Capri, V6 Capri, all sorts of things, and the racing was. You know, had cars like Michael Stillwell's Escort, in the improved production days. We don't see that anywhere now. I mean, it all seems to be. Do you think we've now swung the pendulum too much towards the interests of show business rather than pure motorsport?
Well, it's sort of. If I just look at it, basically the fact that we were racing cars that you physically went and bought at the dealerships, and they used to say, "Oh, you win on Sunday, sell on Monday." Syndrome, because they were the same cars. Some light modifications to them eventually, but anyway, but that was the way it was. Whereas today, these cars could be Chevrolets, they could be Fords, but you can't go and buy one like that because it's completely changed. You know, they've made the chassis, they've made everything. But that's motorsport, I think. You look around the world, Formula One, they keep changing their formulas all the time, but Formula One's in a situation, of course, where they can make any formula that it'll work. If you're restricted just to touring cars, it just becomes that little bit harder. But I think everyone's got the idea that if they've got the same cars, they're all capable of winning. And sure enough, that has happened too, because some of the lesser teams are winning. Particularly when they have, say, 3 races on a day, and they put the good tyres on one car for that particular heat, maybe, But always it's the same in any sport. The team with the most money often wins, and that's not going to change, I don't think, for some time.
You got your start in the mid to early 1960s with in hill climbing, and it was a much bigger sport back then. And when you have a look at it, I mean, people like Sir Jack Brabham, Peter Brock, and all the rest of them got their start in hill climbing. Tell us about that. Tell us about the Lynx Peugeot.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because, like in 1964, we did the Round Australia Rally in a Volkswagen, and won the crew under the age of 25. And Bob Holden was actually in the same event, and we was talking to Bob, and he said he had this Lynx Peugeot that he wanted to sell. And so we got back to Sydney, went and had a look at it and come to do a deal. And in those days, you should always buy the car as it finishes on the racetrack. You never let it go back to the factory because they might take all the good bits out of it or something like that. Anyway, so we went to Oran Park where it was racing, and it came over the dog leg, and back wheel fell off and the car skidded to a halt, and the wheel and brake drum and everything else has gone down the hill. So anyway, we get it all together, put it back on the trailer to take it home, and I take it home, I put it in the garage, and I sort of put a brick under the suspension where the wheel had fallen off, and I would just stand the wheel up against where it should be, because I knew when my dad came home from work, he'd want to have a look at it. So he walked down, had a look at it, and he kicked the wheel, and it went up the workshop. He looked at it and said, "Shit, it's fragile, isn't it, son?" No, but anyway. But that particular car, it was a proper racing car in size. Hill climb cars in those days, a lot of them were sort of go-karts with bigger motors in them and we used to take the body off it for no reason, but just because it made it a bit shorter, I suppose. And we went to the first hill climbers at Emery Park, from memory, and it was supercharged, so it had lots of torque, and we whistled up the hill and we broke the record. And we thought, oh gosh, maybe it is a hill climb car as well. So we then went to all the hill climbs in New South Wales in particular, and as it turned out, we won the championship 3 times in a row, and we held every record on every hill in New South Wales. And I mean, they were good days, you know. You just sort of load up behind your old man's car or something and drive it to Tamworth for the Tamworth Hill Climb or somewhere else. And we also raced it. There was a pretty good race car. We're just out of phase where everyone sort of looked at all the Formula 1, 2s and 3s, which were, you know, they 1500, and this was 1600 and supercharged. So it was a Formula Libre car, and we could still run it in Formula Libre classes, but and as it turned out, it was great. We had it for, I don't know, up until the end of 60 anyway, and then we sold it. And in that particular time, we started rallying for Mitsubishi. Mitsubishi came out with the little Colts Fastback and things to test here. So, and they would then bring a new car out every year for the Southern Cross Rally for us. And we started Mitsubishi rallying, and then Andrew Cowan used to come out, of course, and I introduced Andrew to the Japanese, and he finished up with Rally Art, which, you know, I kept on saying to him, I should be on 10% of this, but he's a Scotsman.
Get the phone ringing for your business with website development and SEO services from Online Invent. Visit onlineinvent.com.au.
And we'd just like to take a moment to express our heartfelt gratitude to Roy Ellery and all of his team at Online Invent for their unwavering support for In Pit Lane. Online Invent have been instrumental in keeping this program on the air right across 2023, and we honestly can't thank you guys enough. Thank you to Online Invent for being a driving force behind In Pit Lane, of your support for community television, and of course local community motorsport. Remember, if you're looking for web marketing, web page design, SEO or custom software design, do us a favour and contact Roy Ellery and the team at Online Invent at onlineinvent.com.au. And now, before we head back to our interview with Colin Bond, live music from the RMITV studio. And this is The Grandfather Paradox and 2 Hearts, 2 Games. You had a couple of drives in the Bathurst 500 as was then in Isuzu Bel Air.
Absolutely,
was it?
Billette. No, Billette was our rally car, you know.
Right.
It was, look, it was a great rally car. It was a funny car. The Billette, it was only 1600cc, drum brakes all round. Arthur Trelaw owned the car. He was in around Australia with us, and he was the car directly in front of us in the Volkswagen. Anyway, he bought this, and we used to take it rallying. And it's a terrific little rally car. It was right size and what have you. The build quality on it in those days wasn't all that flash, you know. You hit a bump and the bonnet would open, and it was hinged from the front. So then the faster you went, the higher this bonnet would. So you'd be sitting up in the car to try and see over the bonnet. But if you hit another bump when it was up there, it would shut.
Movable aerodynamic device.
No, no, no. Or sometimes the navigator is supposed to get out and open a gate or something, because you were, in those days, if you find a gate, it's how you find it. You've got to leave it. So if it's shut, you open it and shut it. And of course, you'd go to get out and the door wouldn't open. So you'd have to jump out and you'd rush around and open the gate. And next time you'd have bumped, the door would open. So, but that was just early days for obviously for Isuzu. But yeah, we ran it twice at Bathurst. It was only a class car, but we're up against some of the factory teams in, you know, Toyotas and what have you. It actually, at one stage, the front wheel fell off. I came down the straight, around the corner on Pitt Straight, and the front wheel fell off. In those days, you had to change it yourself, so you rush around the back, get the jack, you jack it up, you get the wheel brakes, you go to the front. There's no wheel nuts. So I go and get the wheel, and the brake drum and wheel nuts are still attached to it's broken the hub. So it's all right, so we just whistle it back in and get another thing and put it back on and keep going. But look, it was, you know, we did it twice. They were slow cars, of course, but they were good coming off the mountain. You know, you wait for the bit to come down the hill because you went really good, but compared to the rest of it, compared to the big V8s and things that were around you at the time. But yeah, it's just one of those things, I guess, that you go through in history and you say, yeah, we did that. So I did two before, and I used to run the links there as well, of course, and it was quite quick. I think, you know, in miles per hour, I remember getting 162.54 miles an hour or something down Conrod Straight in the links Peugeot. And it was as quick as the 2.5 litre Climax Brabhams and things and that, except they had better brakes than you and better tyres. So they always got away from you because of that. But
so how did you end up with what was the Holden dealer team? I mean, you ended up co-driving the Monaro with Tony Roberts,
Yep.
and in that first year of driving that car, you actually took the win. So how did that all happen?
Well, Harry sort of was always the Ford man. And then Ford, I think, got Al Turner out to run, you know, Bathurst and things. He'd run sort of teams in America. And so Harry had the flick. And GM went to Harry, I think, and particularly John Bagshaw, those sort of people, and they said, look, Harry, you know, would you like to run it for us? And so he did. And the first race they were going to do, of course, was going to be the Sandown race before Bathurst. And he asked me, he said, would you drive with Spencer Martin at Sandown on that weekend? And I said, oh, gee, sorry, Harry. I'm committed to go to New Guinea to do a rally on the same weekend. So anyhow, so I didn't run that, luckily, because Spencer Martin and then I think Harry got Kevin Bartlett to run, you know, with Spencer. As it turned out, you know, after about lap 5 or something, Spencer ran out of brakes and the thing went backwards into the Armco fence at the end of the straight past and caught fire, and Spencer hurt his back. So it wasn't a great start for the Holden dealer team. But what they did do in the 3 weeks between Bathurst and Sandown, they got new wheels, because the wheels that were on the cars initially were solid steel wheels, and they got slotted wheels to get some air around the brakes. They cut some slots underneath the front bars to get a bit more air into the brakes. And then, because Spencer wasn't running, Harry had 2 racing drivers, which was Peter Macro and Hank Walters. And they sort of got car 1. And then Tony and we got car 2. And then Peter Brock and Desi West was car 3 in those days. Anyhow, we go to Bathurst, and we were on Michelin not race tyres, we used the old road tyres, the XASs in those days. And of course Ford came out with all the race tyres that year, the good years. And of course they were faster in lap times. Anyway, I saw that on car one, Harry had one set of Firestones, and Digby Cook had Firestones on his Monaro, and he was second on the grid. There was Moffat, then there was Digby Cook, and then someone, anyway. And I said to Harry, can't I have to go with those Firestones? They've got to be better, you know. He says, no, Cock. I said, why? He said, they won't fit your car, Cock. It was just the days. You had to sort of fiddle the inner mudguards because, you know, the race tyres were a bit wider and squarer and all that type of thing. It wasn't illegal, it was a grey area, I suppose, you know. But
And Harry was very good at grey areas, I believe.
he was, yeah. But anyway, and they'd done that on car one, of course. They just sort of knocked things around. You know, and I think that the Ford had trouble making their ones fit as well. They were touching some of the uprights and things, which caused Billy Brown's accident when he had rolled along the top of the fence. You know, he blew a tyre one of the good years. That was not in this race, but anyway. But so that was it. And the fact that we ran on the Michelins, and we were staying up with the Fords, but then they started having problems with the tyres. You know, they'd go flat or whatever it is and go in. So we just finished up in the lead, and we held it then right to the end. And I guess it's one of those situations where you can't drive the car flat out. You've got to look after it because it's a series production motor car. The brake pads we have are only about this big, say, you know, compared to what they've got now. And it's all history, but yes, winning that was terrific, you know, with Tony. And then the next race we went to straight away was the Lakeside 1500, and we won that. And then there was a 12-hour race at Surface, so Tony and I won that. And, you know, it was going on like, and went to Warwick Farm and we won that. And then there was a Round Australia rally coming up in 1970, and Tony, myself, and my navigator was in the Monaro for that. We should have won that too, but we won't talk about that. It'll take too long to explain. But we finished up third, and I think Edgar Herman and Hans and Ogier were equal first, then we were next. But yeah, look, it was one of those things. But as you mentioned before, once we're in the Holden dealer team, we're there for 7 years. We were 3 times the rally champion with the XU1s. The XU1s actually were a brilliant little motor car, basically on any circuit we went to except Bathurst, because at Bathurst you just needed the V8 to get up the hill, you know. I think the first year at Bathurst in 1970, I led the race for about the first 5 laps, and then Moffat just went past me going up Mountain Straight. See you later, you know, sort of situation. So we knew that we needed to get a V8, and they tried to get that in the XU1s, but that never happened. But the old 34 turned up, and that was a V8, you know, and away we went. And of course, all that stuff's history now, I suppose.
Of course, in those days, one of the things that, you know, I remember speaking with Jack Brabham at one stage, he said one of the things that he sort of regretted, I suppose, were nowadays that drivers basically don't have that variety that you had. I mean, you were talking about, you were racing circuit, you were racing rallies, you were racing sports sedans, and everybody was doing that. I mean,
absolutely.
Nowadays they just stick to one category, and they pretty much, apart from Shane Van Gisbergen, who's sort of gone back to reinvented that.
Well, he
that
does,
thing
yeah, because he does rallies because his dad was a rally driver as well in New Zealand. So, you know, and he does all. Well, he's over there now doing NASCAR and all that sort of stuff as well. Look, and people used to say, was it different between racing and rallying? I said, well, not really, you know. And they said, which do you prefer? And I said, look, if you had to do one, you do racing because it was easier because you just went to one place, you know, where rallying. I really enjoyed rallying because I think in rallying, if you really try hard, you actually went faster. Whereas in racing, you really try hard sometimes and go slower. You know, because it's being a bit more like a robot. You just got to do everything precise and make sure you don't use the tyres too much and so on. So it was good, but the trouble with the rallying, of course, sometimes you break down the middle of a forest and, you know, middle of the night, you know, and you think, what the hell are we doing out here?
So
and you have to wait.
Alpine rallies and all that rest.
Exactly,
Probably not the best place to be in.
Well, I mean,
late
it was
at night in a cold Melbourne winter, cold Victoria.
That's what I'm saying. I think, you know, when it's raining and muddy and you're lying in the mud trying to get the car going. I said, I can imagine if being shot at in the war or something, you do something similar, but I don't know why we're doing this on a Saturday night. But anyway, yeah.
Now, of course, with that variety, you also had a few drives of a Formula 5000,
Yeah,
particularly one most famously at an Australian Grand Prix at
Warwick
Warwick Farm at one stage with Frank Matich's McLaren. You did very, very well on that particular occasion. Do you regret not doing more open wheel racing?
Oh, well, I sort of did that. If you look back at the Lynx Peugeot, that was open wheeler, right? But look, you know, I think that in Australia it was always going to be touring cars were going to be mainly. But in that period, Formula 5000 was quite strong. Frank asked me if I'd like to drive the McLaren. I said, sure. So we went to Warwick Farm short circuit, did a couple of, which was, you know, just around the pit area sort of thing, and that. And yeah, it was good. And then I said, but I wouldn't mind taking it somewhere where I can drive. So we took it up to Surfers Paradise just to give it a run on some faster bends and corners so you could get it. So then we go back and it's a Warwick Farm at the Grand Prix and it's raining. And Frank says, look, I've got one set of wets mounted. He said, I'll put them on my car and I'll go out and do a time. And then come in, put them on your car and you can go out and do a time. And I'm sitting in the pit thinking, oh my God, I've never driven one of these things in the wet and I haven't done much lows in them anyway. I was just convinced I was going to be 10 seconds off the pace. So anyhow, he comes in, we put them on the car, out I go, and I'm driving it like a bloody rally car, you know, it's sort of locking up brakes. And I'm thinking, it's got me stuffed out of these cars any faster anyway. As it turned out, I was on pole. I was 3 seconds faster than Frank on the same tyres, you know, and about...
What was the reaction? Because you had all of those internationals around.
Oh, absolutely,
at the time, you know,
yeah.
some of the top stars from America were
right.
out. And I mean, what was the reaction when they found out that this was your first ever Formula 5?
Well, I don't know, but I mean, and the thing was that they also must have thought that maybe this rain's going to stop and we're going to have a dry session later on, because that's what actually happened. And Frank put it on pole. You know, I think I was 6th fastest in the end. Yeah, look, it was interesting, and then Frank sort of said, look, what we're going to do, we'll do the Tasman Series, which is New Zealand and Australia in those days. Then we'll go across to America. We'll do the L&M Series. Yeah, sounds great. So in the meantime, Frank built his own Formula 5000, the A, whatever it was, 50 or something. Okay. And he still had the McLaren, of course. And of course, Radicchis in New Zealand bought the McLaren. And it was Paul Radicch's father that bought them. Anyway, so he said, oh, we'll build another A50 and we'll take that, but you won't be able to do the Tasman Series, you know. And oh, I thought, gee, you mean I'm not going to do the Tasman Series. We're going to go over to America. We're going to see circuits I've never seen before in my life. Hardly ever driven the car. And I said to Frank, I think I might stay back here with Holden. But look, you never know what happened, because I mean, a lot of people with Formula 5000 those days finished up, you know, breaking bad knees, breaking legs, all sorts of things, you know, because they were dangerous motor cars. And your feet stuck out in front of the wheels as well, you know, they've made that change.
Speaking of big dangerous motor cars, we were out at Sandown last week for the historic Sandown, and while we were there we did a story on what is a replica of the car that was affectionately known as the Beast,
right?
The Repco powered XC1 sports sedan.
Yeah.
Did it deserve its title of the Beast? What are your memories of that
car?
Well,
it was a Harry, wasn't it? Harry car. It was probably an old rally car, right? So the rally cars get knocked around a lot and things, you know. And then he came and chopped all the middle out of it and put the motor further back and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, look, we drove it, but it was pretty dangerous, because I mean the motor was whacked here somewhere. If a flywheel came off, you'd be chopped in half, sort of thing, or something. I think they've sort of stopped that side of it now. But look, we sort of had a couple of those. We had another one which just had a V8 engine in it, the small V8, which I took to Bathurst. And in those days we used to have a Bathurst in the like Easter time, and then you had the long distance race later on. And we just did that to see what the performance was like around Bathurst, thinking that we put the V8 in the XU1 if it was okay, which it would have been. And then, of course, the Formula 5000 motor turned up as well. Look, they were pretty basic, you know. I finished up building the other sports sedan, the L34 sports sedan in Sydney, and it was a much better car, but you know, we sort of had Henry Nerobecki giving us a hand. Henry built Frank's cars. He built the sports, you know, the A50 and the sports car prior to that was, you know, and he came out of England, you know, working, you know, for Lola or one of those sort of firms over there. But then again, we never had the money to run the steady thing, so I don't know. It was just something you do at the time, and you know, I was supposed to just get all the prize money. There was good prize money for that sort of category, but Harry wanted to keep it all.
That's it. Over the years, I mean, you really sort of went through from the days of, you know, series production cars,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
all the way through to actually the supercar era.
Sure.
To in the end, I mean, through Group A and all
Yeah,
the
yeah,
rest
yeah.
of all the cars you've driven, I mean, what's the one that what's the affection, the great affection, the great love of your life? Which car would
Yeah,
you say
well-
that's the one?
Look, it's always hard because, I mean, the last one we drove was for Freddie Gibson and, you know, Winfield at Bathurst. And it was the last car. If you look at touring cars, they were the better car because they're getting better all the time, right? But the car I really liked driving was the Porsche 956, I think we ran at Sandown when they had that sports car championship there when they made the track a bit longer, which made the track worse, of course. But anyway, that was a full ground effects car. And the other thing was that John Dawson Damer, who was my navigator, he had 7 Formula One Lotuses from the 16, 18, right through 25 to the full ground effects 72, which I used to drive at Oran Park and that. And then we raced the 49, which was the Graham Hill car, might have been the Graham Hill car, with the first of the DFE 3-litre engines in them and that sort of thing. And that was terrific. You know, I think I still hold the Lamb record at Eastern Creek at Group C or Group O or something like that, you know, in that particular car. You know, so it was varied. It was always different. And then you look at the rallying, and the XU1s weren't a bad rally car in their day, but when we had the BDA Escorts later on, they were much better, you know, because they were just lighter, you know, had, well, not much more horsepower, but it was just because it was a better car, handling car-wise. And you could bring the world champions out. The world champion was running the same sort of car we were running. You know, you get Ari Vatanen. He came out and drove for me, you know, in the Southern Cross Rally. And before that, it was Bjorn Watergaard, Hans Orselius, you know, and of course with Ari there was Dave Richards. Dave Richards went on to get Formula One. He was, you know, the BAR Formula One team. He took Subaru Rally team, and he's now doing the Dakar Rally, you know, with the money from the King of Bahrain, who would have too much money. So, like, you know.
You're going to have friends. It's nice to have ridiculously rich friends.
No. But like David's got his own helicopter, of course. When we go to England, you get spoilt. You go everywhere by helicopter, and they use it like a car, you know. But it's, you know, it's a different world over there. They've got much more money. I remember when he had got the rally team, he always had the Rothmans money. Rothmans used to use Dave to, if someone wanted some Rothmans money for Motorsport, they would give it to Dave and see if Dave would say whether it was feasible or not, you know. But anyway, I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, it's, he had Ari drive, you know, the very first year they had the Subarus, and he said he paid Ari £4 million to drive, and in those days £4 million was equivalent to 12 million Australian dollars, you know, because we used to go over there with $1 million and come back with £300 or something, you know. So the thing was, no team in those days in Australia had anywhere near that amount of money, but that was just, the difference was his money over there. Ari, of course, was a fast driving and crashed a lot. But they didn't mind that over there, as long as you're winning when you crash, sort of thing, you know. Because I always tell a funny story when Ari came out to drive for me in the Southern Cross Rally, and he said, I must have a left-hand drive car if you want me to drive 1010s. And we said, yeah, okay, we can build a left-hand drive car. Bits are available. So we did all that. And then, he comes to the workshop and we looked at the car and he said, oh, Colin, how many rollovers you had this year? And I said, oh, none, Harry. Why? How many you had? He said, oh, I think I'm up to 10. See, I said, oh, Jesus, Harry, we can't afford that. And he says, well, how do you know where the limit is? I said, look, that I couldn't answer, but there was just no way you could go riding off of those cars. Anyhow, so he sits in the car and he said, I want the car a bit higher, the seat, so I can see over the bonnet. Yeah, no problems, And then Dave gets in the car and he said, I want my seat as low as possible and move it more towards the centre of the car, And I just sort of thought, oh, well, he's just offsetting the fact that Harry's up there and he's down here and a bit of traction on the back wheels. And when I finally asked him, I said, David, why do you want to sit down there? He said, oh, I just want to be as far away from the accident that we're probably going to have. But, look, it was different those sort of days. It was a lot of fun.
A whole lifetime of motorsport. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, we could be here forever, and we haven't even covered, the Moffat era and all of the other things that come along. Because I mean, that's something you've just spoken about so many times, the famous finish and all the rest of it. But at this stage, I mean, do you still have the passion for it, the love of the sport that you used to?
Yeah, well, look, the thing was that we took over doing, looking after when the V8 Fuji went and they wanted me to be the driving standards advisor for them, And it was we did it a little bit for the 2 litre category. When the 2 litre category is on here, I was doing the driving standards for that with Peter Wallerman, and I used to call Peter Wallerman the hanging judge. He was. We could actually go look at some of the footage and tell them they're dead, not dead. You're going to be penalised because of what you did. So we didn't actually take it to the stewards, except if they wanted to take it to the stewards, they could. But it just stopped a lot of the rubbish that goes on. When you go into stewards' hearings and things. So then the V8s wanted me to do the same thing, so we didn't have a rule. So we started to sit down and sort of make some rules too. Because the cars are so equal, it's very hard to overtake. So you've got to have some. So we came up with all these sort of different things. You've got to be at least up level with the car in the middle before you can call the corner yours and so on. But it was interesting. It was like being a referee at a football match. You didn't make the rule, you applied the rules. And if we gave someone a drive-through penalty because it was an obvious incident, they couldn't come back afterwards and say, well, that was we've got proof that you've made a mistake, We said, well, it's like a football match in those days. Sometimes referees said, psh, and then made a mistake when they really looked at it. Right. But not really. I mean, because we did have TV, we did have obviously, in-car information as well. But what they were trying to do at the time was if they'd like the winner to be the one up in the dice, not to be sort of knocked out later on or something. So if you could do something which was obvious and get it over and done with, it was the right way of doing it. So yeah, but it was interesting. I did it for 10 years and they're still doing it, of course, but it's just difficult because of the fact that all cars are the same. They've got the same brakes, the same tyres, the same horsepower, the same gear ratios. Where we were able to modify or change all that,
Well, we've held you up for way too long. We've got people outside demanding your presence because we're here. A lot of people want to meet you. Colin, it's been a thrill to catch up with you. As I said before we started, I've interviewed so many people over the years, and you were sort of one person on the list today that I hadn't ticked off, and now I have. So I'm sure everybody watching in Pit Lane has enjoyed this, and hopefully we might get the chance to do this again sometime. Well, but for now, Colin Bond, thanks for joining us in Pit Lane.
Well, thank you. I mean, we could probably go down the Ford bit next time. Okay.
Stay tuned for chapter 2. Thanks, Colin.
What was that?
Yes, thank you to Colin and thank you to everyone at Team 18 for making it possible. We had so much to talk about and so little time, but I mean, when you've got a career that's gone that long, and I mean, the man is 81, believe it or not. I mean, extraordinary, just so fit, so sharp, and had a wonderful career, and is still very passionate, obviously, about the sport. Hey, listen, speaking about passionate, we're passionate about supporting local music. I just want to say thank you to all the musicians and the bands that have come into the program over the last year. We've really appreciated it. It's something different that we really enjoy doing. And we're going to take it out, as per usual, with a band. The band is the Grandfather Paradox. You can see them playing right across Melbourne. And if you want to find out more about it, check out their socials on Facebook and Instagram. They're available. Just search for Grandfather Paradox Band and you'll track them down. But to all of you, thank you so much for 2024, to our wonderful volunteer crew. I couldn't have done this without you people. You have just performed above and beyond the call of duty, and I really do appreciate everything you've done. Also to our sponsor, to Roy Ellery. Thank you, Roy, for your support. As I've said a few times, the show would not have survived into this year had it not been for the support of Roy. As for next year, hey, listen, I got a lot of stuff to get through before we even think of that, but the plan is, if we can come back, we'll be back. So to take us out for 2024, have a great holiday season. This is the Grandfather Paradox, and good night.
Close the door and hold on tight. If you ask nicely, I just might take you for your favorite ride. Against the wall or on the bed, I'll have you hanging by a thread. Reality out of your head.